Hello everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Garnett McGraw with The Clearing, and we are a non 12-step dual diagnosis residential addiction treatment center. And the translation for that is that we help people to deal with their unhealed trauma with the mental and emotional health issues that lead to addiction. And so today we are talking about facing up to family trauma. This is sadly common, and there is a really strong link between trauma and addiction. So, the first question is, can a dysfunctional family experience lead to trauma? And the answer is yes, because psychological trauma is entirely subjective. The definition of trauma is something that was shocking and deeply upsetting to you personally. So that means that your experience of your family life is going to be different from your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, your fathers. You all have your own experience. And while we can look at certain dynamics such as abuse and neglect and say those tend to lead to trauma, we see that as a pattern, we also can't know what is traumatic for each individual. For example, you might have an event where your parents split up and they divorce. And that might be very traumatic for you at a young age, but your sibling might not really struggle very much with that at all. That might have been more of a blip on the radar, depending on where they were in their development, depending how old they were, what kind of personality they had. So my point in sharing this with you is to say that if you feel that your family life was a real struggle and contributed to your traumatic experiences, then that is valid because the definition of trauma is subjective. Now, that said, we don't want to leave you here with that unhealed mental and emotional pain. Today, we're going to talk about how to start to move through that. But first, I just want to also introduce the idea that often addiction actually can be two things. One, it can be a response to the unhealed pain from trauma. So it's an attempt to alleviate mental and emotional pain. But it can also actually be a dysfunctional attempt to break the patterns that you have experienced in your family life. So it might sound a little crazy, but go with me here, that you might have known deep down that something was wrong in your family. And on a subconscious level, you might have made a decision that I'm not going to live the same life that my parents had lived. And perhaps you began an addiction as an attempt to differentiate yourself from a dysfunctional family environment. And so the important thing to recognize there is that it came from a place of you saw something that you didn't like and you wanted to do something differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. But realizing that your attempts to differentiate and individuate can be hurting you. So obviously, when you're hurting yourself, it's time to make a change. So I want to talk a little bit about family systems theory. And what this means is seeing yourself in the context of an interconnected web of relationships. And the reason I share this is because often we just think, oh, this is me and my addiction, and I need to heal and I need to recover and I need to take responsibility for myself. And that's absolutely true. No denying that. I just also want to bring in the family piece so that you recognize that your addiction might very well have arisen from a place of intergenerational dysfunction. For example, if your great grandfather or great grandmother abused your grandparents, and then they in turn abused your parents, maybe in a different form. But if they carried on that legacy of dysfunction, what family systems teach us is that we are autonomous individuals, yes, but we also are deeply impacted by our closest relationships. And so if it's helpful to you and empowering to you, you can see yourself and your struggles within a broader context, that it's not just about, oh, I failed, I don't have willpower or anything like that. You can really look and see, wow, this is where I've landed as a result of having a family that had a great deal of struggle and didn't model healthy relationships. And I did deal with abuse and neglect. And that brings me to another point, which is that research now shows us that certain types of trauma very often precede addiction. And the one specifically that they have focused in on is child abuse. So, be that physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse, having a history of childhood abuse is a very strong predictor of later developing a substance abuse disorder in your life. In fact, there's actually a stat from the National Institute on Drug Abuse that says that 2/3 of people in treatment for substance use disorder were physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as children. 2/3 of people who are in treatment for addiction have a history of abuse. That is not a coincidence. That is a sad mirror reflecting the pain and the trauma that they endured, typically in their family context, because we also know that most of the perpetrators of sexual abuse are not typically strangers. They're people who are known to the child, and often it occurs actually within the family, which can make it even more painful, right? Because it's not just the pain of the incident, it's the pain of what does this mean for my relationships, and I interact with this person every day, and it compounds pain on top of pain. So I want to emphasize substance abuse and addiction can really be an attempt to cope with that pain on top of pain on top of pain. And so instead of looking at it as a failure of willpower or some kind of moral judgment, really looking at it and seeing, wow, if someone is abusing substances and getting addicted, 9 times out of 10, they have a tremendous amount of mental and emotional pain, and they are just trying to cope with it. They're trying to cope in the best way that they know how. And when we see that, I mean, if we see someone with a broken leg and they're in pain, we have compassion for that person. But with addiction in our culture, there's been this disconnect that we don't see that and think, oh, that person is in pain. We don't see it that way because the mental and emotional wounds are harder to see than the physical ones. Obviously, if we see someone lying on the street with a broken leg, then it's easier to recognize than mental and emotional wounds. So I also wanted to read you a quote from Murray Bowen, who is the thinker who really founded family systems theory and really propelled that forward. And it's, that which is created in relationship can be fixed in relationship. That which is created in relationship can be fixed in relationship. And so I share this if you are struggling with addiction and with substance abuse disorder, and you know that the mental and emotional pain really originates with abuse or neglect in your childhood, know that that struggle was created in a relationship and it needs to be fixed in a relationship. And so with people who have substance abuse issues and depression, anxiety, trauma, often that relationship is with a supportive professional counselor to start, because you need to be able to see and practice essentially those healthy connections because you didn't have them in your family system and you didn't have that early learning. And that being said, a really good counselor will empower you to be able to have a stronger bond and a stronger relationship within yourself. It is important when you're first beginning to really work very closely with a trained professional who can help you to do this. But then as you move forward, it's also incredibly important to be able to counsel yourself and to be able to have the skill to apply love to the parts of yourselves that hurt, because that's how we heal. When we apply love to the parts of ourselves that hurt, that is when we heal. So if you shift yourself and if you start healing yourself by applying love to those parts that hurt, know this: because you are an interconnected part of your family system, your healing and your recovery impacts everyone else in the system. You cannot force another person to change. Obviously, that has to come from them. We can't change other people. But if you step into greater health, greater integrity, healing in your own life, know that that does ripple out. That does have an impact, because the whole basis of family systems, the whole foundation of it states that how we behave, how we show up, it's all connected. We have the power to affect and to to bless or to curse each other, essentially. That's sort of a dramatic way of putting it. But know that you're not just recovering in your own best interest, that it can also serve and support your family. That's the larger point I'm making here. And also, just as a final note, know that you will, chances are, you may get a lot of pushback from your family system as you step into greater healing, greater wholeness, and recovery, as you start to apply love to the parts of yourself that hurt, and you stop your dysfunctional patterns of substance abuse or being hyper busy or whatever it is that you typically use to numb the pain. You might actually get what Dr. Martha Beck calls change back attacks from the people close to you, even if you know deep down that they want you to recover. So you might think, that doesn't make sense. You know, I know that my parents want me to get clean, or I know that my sister really wants me to be sober. But the reality of it is that when you shift, when you change how you're showing up, it affects the whole dynamic. It affects everyone else. It affects the way they're showing up. And you're changing, you're stepping out of your familiar role. And that can be very, very disconcerting for the people around you, even if intellectually, of course, they want you to recover, they want you to get better. But along the way, it may bring up a lot of stuff for them. It may bring up some of their unhealed parts, and it may feel threatening to them. So just know that that is the fearful part of their brain, the part of their brain that just wants to be in safety and in security. And so what you can say is simply offer reassurance. I know things are changing. I know it's different, but it's okay. I love you. This is something that we help teach our graduates, is really to center in your loving heart and see the loving essence in another person. Because if you come from a place of love, then you don't have to hook into their fear. They can be as hooked into fear as they want to be, but you just see them with a loving heart. And you see that when they're giving you the change back attack, they're just scared. They're just scared. Deep down, you know, if they truly love you, they want what's best for you. And so I don't want to run too much over our time, so I will end there. But next time, I want to share that we will bring you some strategies to talk about family-based prevention and how you can create a really healthy family system that can help people to heal from trauma and also prevent future addiction and substance abuse. So we will be bringing that forward next time. And in the meantime, if you want to speak to someone, if you have gone through a great deal of trauma in your life and the hurt from that is manifesting itself in substance abuse, then our doors are open, metaphorically speaking. You can always give us a call and have a free confidential conversation about what you're going through. And we will do our utmost to support you and direct you to the resources that you need in order to heal. So our phone number is 425-275-8600. Once again, 425-275-8600. And I will post that number along with some resource posts in the comments section as well. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.